Welcome back to the channel. This time, we're going over how to install Steam. Whether you install Steam or not actually isn't the point. Not everyone likes gaming, after all. But this installation process definitely taught me a lesson. So, let's get started. The simplest way is to just search for Steam in the App Store, download it, and install it. After the installation finishes, you'd think you just click the program, and it pops right up, like you see me doing here. But back then, that was absolutely not the case for me. I clicked it several times and nothing happened. Now, you do need a little patience when installing mini programs, because mini programs run their own configuration the first time they launch. If a program keeps failing to launch and you want to know what's going on, there's one way to check. Open the terminal and launch it directly using the program's name. Look at all these logs it spat out today, stuff I don't even recognize. Now, Steam doesn't always use a different color to flag errors when something goes wrong. It just says, whatever, never mind. But if you get too many of those never minds, the program simply won't launch. So, I had to sift through these execution logs and look for anything that was acting up. To be fair, when it actually has a problem, it does mark it as an error. The very first thing I found was this string. Pressure vessel wrap. 18,929. W. Failed to load Vulkan ICD. A quick search on Google AI confirmed that Vulkan is a tool that helps utilize the GPU. I actually had my NVIDIA drivers installed already, for the graphics card in my laptop. But I was still getting that error. So, I followed Google's advice and just installed all the related packages. After installing all those, I tried launching Steam again. This time, the request was much clearer. A small window popped up asking me to run 3 commands. But you could also dismiss it. The commands were sudo dpkg, add architecture i386, sudo apt update, and sudo apt install steamlibs i386. Essentially, that 386 architecture it wants you to install is a prerequisite for the Windows system emulator. I don't currently have a Windows emulator installed on this machine. Among the researchers I work with, the most common choice is Wine. I personally hadn't planned on installing Wine specifically. I prefer to just install whatever version Steam itself recommends. Once that was done, I downloaded a game for testing. The game downloaded, Steam said the installation was complete. And then when I tried to run it, Steam just gave up. Basically, what the messages told me was that Steam configured some stuff, figured out what was missing, and then just removed everything. So, the system itself was fine. It won't crash your whole OS just because a program failed to execute. But even looking at those messages, I couldn't figure out why it didn't succeed in the end. It was acting like it didn't need to run in the first place. After looking carefully through the logs, I saw that some things weren't found, and Steam just decided to ignore them. And then I saw this line in the logs that looked like it was a key requirement. It was game overlay renderer.so from ld_preload cannot be preloaded. Wrong elf class. ELFCLASS32. I hit up Google AI. And it turns out what it really wanted was lib32. The library required for the Windows emulator. So I installed lib32 Mesa libgl and lib32 ALSA plugins. Then I tested it with PolyBridge, and nope, still wouldn't start. So, I went right back to Google AI. It was suggesting I change the game's compatibility settings. But mine didn't really have many options. The most I could do was change the default compatibility tool. And every time I changed it, it would make me download something new. So, eventually, I switched it back to the default, which was experimental. After all that switching back and forth, PolyBridge still wouldn't launch. I checked the game directory and finally confirmed that what it downloaded was still an .x file, a Windows executable. Then, it finally occurred to me to look for compatibility settings within the game settings itself. And there it was, the culprit. The default emulator for this game, Steam Linux Runtime 1.0, wasn't even listed in my Steam-enabled options. It must be a super old version. I changed it to Steam's current default setting, and finally, the first game launched. This game is currently installed on the local drive. My hard drive is pretty small, and I have it partitioned into several sections. Plus, I wasn't even sure if the Linux version of Steam supports external drive storage. So, I decided to test it with a different game, Retopia. The Retopia game program is 2 gigabytes. It downloaded without any problems, which was nice. When I launched it the first time, Steam slowly gathered the necessary data and ran an update. Then, I saw a note that its current compatibility was set to experimental, and it needed to be changed to Proton version 10. And then it just kept downloading. It was late, and I didn't dare turn it off, so I left the computer running and went to sleep. I woke up the next day, and it was finally finished downloading. The game launched. Congratulations to me, the game was actually running. It didn't just crash halfway through after getting stuck. The day after that, I tried launching the installed Raptopia again, and guess what? It was stuck booting up for a really long time. This time, I was pretty sure the problem was the USB drive. The transfer performance was just terrible. Or maybe the drive itself had some kind of issue. I even tried to stop the execution using Killel, but it couldn't terminate the thread. After a restart, the system couldn't even recognize the USB drive anymore. So, I just reformatted that USB and installed Raptopia locally on the machine instead. This time, I didn't wait long at all compared to the several hours I waited before. The startup time was perfectly reasonable. All things considered, I'd say the performance of this DIY Steam emulator setup is definitely a pass. Next, let's take a look at Steam's installation directory. When we change versions, what exactly is it downloading? You can see from this screenshot that there are 2 specific directories. One called Polybridge, and one called Raptopia. If we click into the Polybridge directory, you can see an .x file and a .dll file. Both of those are Windows files. And if we click into the other directory, you can see those same 2 types of files. So, the program executable that's downloaded for the Linux version is exactly the same as the Windows version. The games are running via an emulator. If we look back at the other items in the installation directory, we can see all the various versions listed under compatibility. Seriously, I had a ton of versions at that point. When I reinstalled Raptopia, I used the hotfix version. The original old version for Polybridge. The Linux runtime. All the older versions I tested one by one. And the final successful Proton experimental version. They can all be found in the installation directory. So, clearly, Steam is putting in a massive effort to expand its user base. I've talked before about one of Windows' great achievements being its ability to get many developers willing to create programs for its system. And a huge chunk of that development is games. Even though the big money is actually in commercial software. Steam is releasing its own new console soon. It probably won't be running Windows. But a lot of the programs developed for the Steam system are actually Windows programs. If we look at the recent handheld device that Asus released for Xbox. Xbox is actually a Windows system too. When you use a Windows system, every single machine has to have a license. Now, the license isn't actually the biggest problem for a new console. The real issue is that the Windows system is too bulky. If you didn't have to run the entire OS, games could probably run much smoother. For example, Platforms like Sony PS or Nintendo don't really have optimization problems. That's because they are dedicated gaming systems. So, the crucial function of the Steam console, which we've seen during this Linux installation, is its capability to seamlessly transform a Windows executable into a dedicated gaming system. Now, if you ask me if Steam should pivot to a fully dedicated platform and only support their own OS, I honestly don't think that's the play. Here's the reality. The demographic of gamers actually willing to drop serious cash on high-end hardware? It's a tiny slice of the total population. If you look at where the volume is right now, it's Android. Why? Because a smartphone is an essential tool, everyone has one in their pocket. Gaming is just something people do on the side because it's convenient. And frankly, that rise of mobile operating systems is exactly why we're seeing the Windows user base start to dip. That's going to wrap it up for this video. Talk to you all next time.